Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding the Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirza Hashem, today we will be learning Daf Kuf Samech Tes Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today with a brand new Siman Shin Chaf Tes, beginning on the bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Kuf Samech Tes Amid Aleph. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzaru Bashivya Ha'im Deben Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Alehem V'Yitzim Yitzaru Lervacha Me'afelu La'Oira Mishim L'Geula Hashto Bagalo of Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malka Chana Gila Shifra Bas Ilana Udel Yitzchak Ben Sion Ben Dusha Rivka Bas Shira Leach Hav Hadassah Bas Serel. They should have a Refuah Shalema B'Sar Shar Chel Yisrael. In the schus of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, we are mispal that the Rebbe Shalom should watch over every single member of Klal Yisrael b'chal makom shehem, and everyone should have a ksiva v'chsima tova, a good gebenched yor. Says the Mechaber Siman Shin Chaf Tes, Al mi mechalalin Shabbos. On behalf of who are we mechalal Shabbos? Ubay tes seifim, and here we have 9 seifim. The Mechaber opens up Siman Shin Chaf Tes with a concept that we already learned in Siman Shin Chaf Ches. Says the Mechaber Sef Aleph, Kol pikuach nefesh doiche Shabbos. Any case of pikuach nefesh, any time where it's necessary to do something to save a life, where a life is in danger, whatever it is that we need to do, even if it's a malacha da'araisa, the needs of pikuach nefesh are doiche Shabbos. Not only that, says the Mechaber, v'hazariz, whoever acts with alacrity to go ahead and save a life, even if it requires chilul Shabbos, harezeh meshubach, he is praiseworthy. Afilu nafla deleka b'chatzer acheres. Even if a fire, chas v'chalila, breaks out, and the fire is not in the chatzer where there are Yiddish people living, the fire breaks out in a neighboring chatzer. Afilu nafla deleka b'chatzer acheres. V'yarei sheta'avar lechatzer zu, and we are afraid. There's a reasonable fear that the flames may spread and the fire may spread to an adjacent chatzer. V'yavai lidei sakana, and that is going to end up endangering lives. Mechabin, you extinguish the fire. Kedei shaloi tavar, in order so that it should not spread. So in this case, we don't have, it doesn't seem that we have a direct threat to human life. We have a fire that broke out in an adjoining chutzner, and in that chutzner where the fire is burning, there are no lives in danger. But there's an adjacent chutzner, and should the fire spread to that chutzner, there will be danger to human life. Even in that case, the Mechaber says you're allowed to extinguish the fire, which could be malacha daraisa. It's probably more of a malacha darabanan when you extinguish the fire, because it's a malacha shein tzricha legufa. But still in all, you do whatever it is you have to do, and we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah, you are over even isurei daraisa, such as haitzah daraisa, for the requirements of putting out the fire so that it should not spread to the adjacent chatzer and bring danger to human life. Says the Mishnah Berurah on Kuf Samech Tes Amid Beis, Mishnah Berurah is cotton aleph. Lidei sakana. We're afraid that if the fire will spread, it will bring danger to human life. What is the case? What is the danger to human life? Explains the Mishnah Berurah on Kigain, Dekasham Chaylim. Maybe in the adjacent chutzner, in one of the homes, there's an ill individual who can't get out of the house. Oiktanim, or there are babies and little children, infants, who can't escape from the fire. If there are people who are awake and able-bodied and they're adults and they could very easily get out of the house. So again, the case that we're addressing over here is where a fire broke out in an adjacent chutzner. So it's not, an emergency situation. It's 3:00 in the morning, chas v'chalila, and a fire broke out, in a house. We're talking about there's 2 chatzerim. There's 2 courtyards with houses around each courtyard. A fire broke out in courtyard A, and in courtyard B, there are houses, and in those houses, there are able-bodied, healthy adults, and they have plenty of time. Well, in that case, they should get themselves out of the house. They should get themselves out of the chotzer, and we don't see over here an issue of pikuach nefesh. But what do you do if there are sick people and they can't get out? There are babies, there are infants, they can't get out. You don't have enough people to transport them in a safe manner and in an efficient manner, in a quick way. Well, in that case, there's a reasonable fear here that should the fire spread, there will be danger to human life, and therefore you're allowed to extinguish the fire. We're going to learn later, there's going to be a dedicated Siman to the question of putting out fires on Shabbos, and over there, we're going to go into these questions in greater detail. Ois cotton bays. So the Mechaber said, Mechabin, you could extinguish the fire. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hu adin, the same halacha would be true, Deshari lahafsik bekelim shal matchis, you could go ahead and you could get metal utensils. Let's say, I don't know, you have some big stainless steel tables, and you want to go set them up as a blockade, as a fire break, to go ahead and stop the fire from spreading. You could go ahead and make a barrier to the fire using metal kalim, or you could do a very primitive form of fire extinguisher. You take earthenware kalim, earthenware barrels that are filled with water. And what happens is when you make a line of them blocking the fire, when the fire hits them, the earthenware kalim will bust, the water will come out, and it will extinguish the fire. So, matter of fact, I talk about primitive fire extinguishers. Back in the day, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they would make a type of fire extinguisher. They were called fire grenades. They were glass globes that were filled with a liquid fire retardant. And when there was a fire, you would take one of those and you would throw it at the fire, and it would bust and put out the fire. So these are kind of like fire grenades. Afilu, and the chiddush over here, the Mishnah Berurah is telling you you could create this barrier to block the fire. The chiddush is afilu tzarech lahavi akelim derek rishos harabim. You could even do this if you have to transport the metal kalim or the fire grenades through the rishos harabim. Deka harbe yisurim. And now you're going to encounter many different yisurim. Well, let's see. If you're going to transport these fire grenades through the Rishos Harabim, so you have being moilech them dalat amas in Rishos Harabim, right? That's one iser of hoitzah, hiluch dalat amas b'Rishos Harabim. Also, if you're taking them out of a Rishos Hayachid, transporting them through the Rishos Harabim, and then bringing them back into another chotzer, bringing them back into a Rishos Hayachid, you have hoitzah and hachnasa, right? Those are all isurei daraisa. You also have the Isser of Kibui, the Isser of extinguishing. So you have a whole passel of Isurim over here. This is still mutter because of Pikuach Nefesh. Kasav Magen Avram. Magen Avram writes, and I love this Magen Avram because this Magen Avram points out something that we've seen time and time again in Hilchos Shabbos, and that is the need when dealing with Hilchos Shabbos to remain level-headed and to do the math. You always have to do the math when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos. What do I mean? Let's see this Magen Avram. Kasav Magen Avram, the Magen Avram writes, Im yakal lahatzel asachoyle v'katan. Let's say you have chas v'chalila, you have a house that's on fire, and inside the house, or a fire in a chotzer, and you have an ill person that needs to be transported away from the fire, or you have a katan, you have an infant that needs to be transported. Now, you're faced over here with a few choices. It might be possible to extinguish the fire. So one course of action would be, okay, we have an ill individual who can't escape the fire. We have an infant who can't escape the fire. It's a question of pikuach nefesh. Let's extinguish the fire. And we're talking about where you can extinguish the fire and where that's a valid option. So option number one is extinguish the fire in order to prevent danger to the chayla or to the katan. Or you have another option. The other option is im yakal lahatzel asachoyle v'katan lisa oisam derech rishos harabim. The other thing you could do is let the fire burn. Go ahead, take the chayla, take the infant, carry them out of the house, and carry them through the rishos harabim and bring them into another house. So over here you have a fire, you have an ill individual, you have an infant. Two courses of action. Course of action number one: save the ill individual, save the infant by extinguishing the fire. Course of action number two, don't extinguish the fire, but save the ill individual and save the infant by doing the malacha of Haitzah. Take them out of the house where they are, transport them through the Rishus Harabim, and bring them into another house. Says the Magen Avram, Afal Pikein Mutav L'Chabos. The better course of action is to go ahead and extinguish the flames. Why is that? Because of something I mentioned a few minutes ago. The loy heavy kiyim malacha she'ein tzricha legufa the pater Allah. Because the truth is that in all of these cases that we're discussing, extinguishing the flames is not an issa daraisa. It's only an issa darabanan. Why is it an issa darabanan? Because of the rule of a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. We've spoken many, many times throughout Chelik Gimel over here that you're only chayiv midaraisa performing malacha on Shabbos when you do it legufa, when you're doing the malacha for the purpose, for the ikar purpose, the main purpose of doing that malacha. You're not chayiv if you're doing the malacha for an ancillary reason. Now, when it comes to the malacha of kibui, the malacha of extinguishing, the Rishonim say that when is kibui considered a malacha shetzricha legufa? What is the purpose of extinguishing a fire? It's to create a coal. How do you produce coal, charcoal? You take wood, you smolder it, and then you extinguish the fire so that you have this condensed, carbonized piece of wood that can be used for fuel that will burn and retain heat for a very long time. So in that case, you're doing the malacha of extinguishing in order to produce something. You're doing it to produce a coal. That's when kibui is called a malacha shetzricha legufa. But in our case over here, why are you extinguishing the flame? Are you extinguishing the flame in order to produce something? No, you're extinguishing the flame because you don't want your house to burn down. You're extinguishing the flames to protect people. That's not a malacha shetzricha legufa. That's only I'm extinguishing the fire because I don't want fire. It's not that I'm extinguishing the fire because I want to produce something. In that case, the act of kibui is considered a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, and we paskin that a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is only asur mid'Rabbanan, not asur mid'Oraisa. So says the Magen Avram, do the math. You have one way to save the ill individual or save the infant by doing an issa d'Rabbanan, a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, extinguish the fire, or you could do isurei daraisa. Take the chayla, carry him out of the house, carry him through the Rishus Harabim, bring him into another house, and put him down. Over here you did isurei daraisa of Haitzah. So better do an issa d'Rabbanan of kibui when it's a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa than to do Haitzah daraisa. Now, you might be tempted to ask a question. And that is, in the case that we just described, is the Haitzah an issa daraisa? Is the Haitzah a malacha shetzricha legufa? Well, let's think about this for a minute. When is Haitzah considered a malacha shetzricha legufa? We've spoken about this also several times throughout our learning Hilchos Shabbos. Haitzah is considered a malacha shetzricha legufa if you have something in your house and you need it in the Rishus Harabim. So then you're doing Haitzah, you're picking up something, you're making an akira in Rishus HaYachid, you're transferring it out to Rishus Harabim, and you're making a hanacha in Rishus Harabim because you want that item in the Rishus Harabim. That's when Haitzah is considered a malacha shetzricha legufa. But how about if you're transporting something from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus Harabim, not because you want it in the Rishus Harabim, only because you want it out of the Rishus HaYachid. What's the classic case in the Gemara? A mace. Nebuch, there's a nifter inside a house. Now, the nifter is in the house. There are people who will have to live in the house. To live in the house together with the nifter in the house is a very difficult, very uncomfortable situation. So you want to transport the mace out of the house. But you're not transporting the mace out of the house because you want the mace in the Rishus Harabim. Or if you're transporting the mace from the house that it was in to a vacant house, right? You're not doing it because you want the mace in the vacant house. You're doing it because you want the mace out of the house that he's in. In that case, transporting the mace is not considered a malacha shetzricha legufa. It's considered a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Now, based on that, you could ask a very valid question. If there's a fire and you're taking the chayla or the infant out of the house, is that a malacha shetzricha legufa? I'm not taking them out because I want them somewhere else. I'm taking them out because I got to get them away from the fire. So l'chari, that should also be a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. It should also be an issa d'Rabbanan. And if that's true, then we're dealing over here with these two different courses of action that the Magen Avram discusses. They're really shave b'shave. They're really equal. L'chari, each one is only a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, and in each case, we're only dealing with isura d'Rabbanan. I believe the answer to this question is that in our case over here, in our scenario, transporting the mace is not a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. And I'll tell you why. Because again, we need to do the math. When we transport the chayla, or we transport the infant, we have to break this down into steps. The first act of Haitzah is going to be picking up the chayla, or picking up the infant inside the house. So that's going to be an akira in Rishus HaYachid. Then we're going to transfer the chayla, or the tinoik, out of the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim. Okay, so now we have the first act of Haitzah. That act of Haitzah, you could argue, is the malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. But if you now take the chayla or the tinoik and you bring them into another house or into another Rishus HaYachid, that's going to be a malacha she'tzricha legufa. Because you can't have the chayla or the tinoik outside just in the Rishus HaRabim for the rest of Shabbos. So now you're going ahead and you're doing a Haitzah that is going to be a malacha she'tzricha legufa. That's going to be an iser d'oraisa. Okay, there's more that can be delved into in this topic, but that's already beyond the scope of what we can do here. Okay, let's go weiter over here in the Mishnah Berurah, Ice Cotton Bays. You know what? I'm just going to read because I didn't do the whole Magen Avram. Kosav Magen Avram. If you could save the ill individual or the infant by carrying them through Rishus HaRabim, the Magen Avram says the better course of action is to extinguish the fire. Why? Because that would be a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, which is only in issa d'Rabbanan. But to transport the ill individual or the tinoik through Rishus HaRabim, harbe paiskim soivrim degam bizmanenu yesh ladu Rishus HaRabim. Many paiskim hold that even our streets are considered bona fide Rishus HaRabims, and therefore it would entail isurei daraisa. V'achayada b'chlal havar kasav delodaitoi mutav lava derech Rishus HaRabim mishiyechabe ayin sham. The Chayada makes a counter argument to the Magen Avram ayin sham. Moving along to Sif Beis, says the Mechaber. Sif Beis, when I took out the Mishnah Berurah to prepare Shir, Sif Beis jumped out at me from left field. Sif Beis is a very, very, very lumdisha Sif that we could certainly spend an hour or two on easily, but we're going to cut it down to its primary components, and we're going to move through it rather quickly. So, as a hakdama to Sif Beis, let's just discuss the very basics of roiv. When it comes to a suffix in din, whenever we have a suffix and we don't know what the din should be, one of the primary tools that the Torah Kedosha gives us to decide a suffix is the concept of roiv. Acharei rabim lahatois, the pasuk says. We are entitled to follow roiv, we're entitled to follow the majority. Now, the question of following a roiv has many, many different rules to it. We're going to discuss two basic rules of roiv, and we're going to use the Gemara's classic case of meat that was purchased from a butcher shop. And that's the case that we're going to use to illustrate these two rules. Rule number one is the very simple rule of roiv that most people are aware of, and that is kol de parish meruba parish. Whenever something was separated from a group, and we are now looking at that item that was separated from the group, and we're trying to decide what it is, we go after the majority. To illustrate that, let's give a case. We have a town, and in the town there are 10 butcher shops. And from the 10 butcher shops, 7 of them only sell kosher meat, and 3 of them only sell treifa meat. So we've got 10 butcher shops, 7 selling only kosher meat, 3 of them selling only treifa meat. We find an unidentified piece of meat that clearly was purchased from one of the local stores. We find such a piece of meat out in the street, but we don't know, is it from the kosher store? Is it from the non-kosher store? Very high level, we could apply the rule of kol de parish, meruba parish. Here we have a piece of meat that became separated from the group. What does that mean? It's found in the street. It's not in any one of the stores. So when we look at all the meat in the town, and we look at 10 butcher shops, we have a mixture over here. We have 7 butcher shops selling kosher, 3 butcher shops selling treif. So we've got this group of stores and this group of meat. And this piece of meat was separated from the group. It was parish. It was taken out of the stores. The suffix is not in the stores. The suffix is in the street. We apply the rule kol de parish. Whenever something was separated from the group, meruba parish. We assume that it comes from the majority. So since over here all the majority of the meat is kosher meat, 7 stores worth of meat are kosher meat, only 3 of the stores are treifa meat, and the stores are equal, they're the same size, whatever it is. We're not digging too deep into this. But we've got a piece of meat that's separated from the group. We apply the rule, kol de parish. Once something gets separated from the group, we assume meruba parish. We assume it came from the majority, and therefore we could use roiv to determine that this piece of meat is a kosher meat, is a piece of kosher meat. That's rule number 1, kol de parish, meruba parish. But then there's another rule, and that is kol kavua. Anytime something is fixed in place in the group, it didn't yet separate from the group. It's still part of the group. It's not the piece of meat that's standing on its own in the street because it's separated from the group. No, it's in the group. Kol kavua, once something is still in the group, kemechza al mechzadami. Then we don't recognize a roiv. Then we say it's like 50%. It's a 50-50 shot what you got. What would the illustration of that case be when it comes to the question of the butcher shops? Let's say you didn't find the piece of meat in the street. What happened was you somehow thought that all of the butcher shops in town were kosher butcher shops. So you walked into one of the butcher shops and you bought a piece of meat. And now you went home. Okay. Now somebody says, oh, wow, that's a nice piece of meat. Where did you buy it? Which store did you buy it in? Oh, I don't know. There's 10 butcher shops over there on the main drag. I walked into one of them and I bought a piece of meat. Uh-oh. 3 of those butcher shops are treifa butcher shops. You don't know which one you bought it in? No, I have no idea which one I bought it in. Now, you might be tempted to use roiv. You'll say, well, 7 of the stores are kosher, so probably we should go basa roiv. We should say that, since the majority are kosher stores, probably I went into a kosher store. No. Now the suffix is not kol de parish meruba parish. The shaila over here starts not out in the street when the piece of meat was already separated from the group. The shaila over here starts when the piece of meat was in the group. It was in one of the stores. You just don't know where you bought it. You don't know which store you bought it from. Over there, the rule is kol kavua. Since the shaila starts when it was kavua, when it was fixed in place amongst the group, kol kavua kemechza mechzadami. Now we say it's a 50-50 shot. Now we say it's equal odds that you might have gone into the treifa store, you might have gone into one of the kosher stores. We don't know which one. So over there, halakha tells us, Gemara in Sanhedrin, over there, halakha tells us we cannot follow roiv, and over there, we have to be choishish that it's treifa meat, that you bought it in a treifa store. So those are the 2 rules of roiv, called the parish, meruba parish. If it's separated from the group, then we assume that it came from the majority. But kol kavua, but if it's fixed in the group, if it's still part of the group, kol kavua kemechza al mechzadami. Now let's take a look how this applies to our Siman Shin Chav Tes. Let's go to Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Ein holkin b'pikuach nefesh achar haroiv. When it comes to shilos of pikuach nefesh and being mechal Shabbos to save a life, we do not follow roiv. Okay. Now let's, I want to take a look at a Mishnah Berurah, even though we're jumping ahead a little bit. Take a look at Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Gimel, where the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us the obvious application of this. Says the Mishnah Berurah Pirush, Loi mebaya im ba'ois achatzer shahaya batisha enam Yehudim v'chad Yisrael nafal ma'poilus. Let's say you have a chatzar, and in the chatzar there's a building, and chas v'chalila, a building collapsed, and we know that there were 10 people in the building, and we know that 9 of them were enam Yehudim, and 1 of them was a Yid. The building collapsed, and now you want to go ahead and you want to do Isurim, you want to be Mechal Shabbos to try to save the people. What Chil Shabbos? You're going to go sift through the rubble, you're going to unpile the rubble of the building and go dig through it. It's very possible that this will entail Isurei Daraisa. Definitely Boine, Soiser. You could definitely come up against Isurei Daraisa here. Now, why are you doing it? Because Nefesh. Well, because Nefesh, there was only 1 Yisrael. There were 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael. Maybe we should go Basarov. How could we be Mechal Shabbos? Maybe we're being Mechal Shabbos only for Einam Yehudim. Maybe we're not being Mechal Shabbos for the Yisrael. Maybe the Yisrael is Batal Barov. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nonsense. Over there, for sure, the Bavadei Mefakhin. Over there, we're definitely not going to apply the rules of Rov. You know why? Because of one of the rules that I just told you. The Chol Kavua Kemechza Mechzadami. Because over here, the 1 Yisrael is fixed in place in the group of the 10 people. There's 9 Einam Yehudim, there's 1 Yisrael. There's no Kol de Parish over here. We didn't pull 1 member of the group outside of the group, so that now we should be tempted to apply Kol de Parish Meruba Parish. Over here, we're dealing with Kavua. There's a group of 10 people that are fixed in place. And that's when we have a suffix. We have a suffix on the members of the group. Well, when it comes to members of a group that are fixed in place, Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechzadami. So we're not going to apply Rov. Ve'ein kan Rov Einam Yehudim. Halachically, we do not recognize a Rov of Einam Yehudim. No, we look at it as a 50-50 shot. Every person that you encounter is in equal odds. It might be the Yid. So that's the obvious case where we would not apply the rules of Rov, because we would say Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechzadami. But now the Mechaber is going to tell us a Chiddush. He's going to tell us a Chiddush in Pikuach Nefesh, where we are going to stretch the rule of Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechzadami. Let's take a look at what the Mechaber says. So he started Sif Beis by saying, Ein holchim b'pikuach nefesh achar Rov. Now says the Mechaber, Afilu, even in the following case, Afilu, Hayutisha oivdei kechavim v'Yisrael echad b'chotzer. There were 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael in a chotzer. Okay? Uperish echad behem l'chotzer acheres. One of them left the group. Oh, okay. So we have Chatzar number 1. We know that in Chatzar number 1, there was a group of 10 people. And we know that that group was 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael. And we saw one person leave the group, and he went l'Chatzar Acheres. We saw one person leave the group and go into Chatzar number 2. V'nafal alav sham ma'poilus. And now a building fell down in Chatzar number 2. Now over here, you might very well be tempted to say, Kol de Parish, Meruba Parish. We had a group of 10 people in Chatzar number 1. And we know that that group was 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael. So it was a Rov Einam Yehudim, a majority of Einam Yehudim, against 1 Yisrael. We know that one person left the group. So he's a parish. He's separated from the group. And he went to Chatzar number 2. Now, Kol de Parish Meruba Parish tells us that the one that left the group should be an Einam Yehudi. And now, in Chatzar number 2, a building fell down. So l'chora, the math would say, Kol de Parish Meruba Parish must be that the one that left the group is an Einam Yehudi. Now a building fell down. We can't go ahead and do Isurim to go uncover him. He's an Eini Yehudi. Says the Mechaber, no. We're not going to say Kol de Parish Meruba Parish. We are still going to say Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. Why? How is it Kavua? How is it Kavua? One person left the group. We're being done on the one who left the group. L'chayr, we're being done on a parish. We should say Kol de Parish Meruba Parish. Says the Mechaber, no. We're still going to say Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. Why? Because the other 9 members of the group are still intact. They're still together in Chatzar number 1. So says the Mechaber, in this Shaila, we're going to look at Chatzar number 1. We're going to say that the Kavua group, the original grouping, is still intact. One of them is missing, but there's still a group of 9 people in Chatzar number 1. So there's still a Kvius. And since there's still a Kvius, even though the Shaila is on the one who was parish, the Shaila is on the one who left the Kvius, it doesn't matter. Since there still is a Kvius in Chatzar number 1, we're going to apply the rule of Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. Why? Not because of logic, Rabbi Isai. The reason is because the pasuk says V'chai Bohem, that the Torah Kedosha is here for us to live by its dictates, and therefore we're makel, and we apply a kula, we rule leniently, and we stretch the rule of Kol Kavua Kemechza Al Mechza Dami to include such a case. Let's see it inside. Says the Mechaber, Afil, first word on line number 2. Even if there were 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael in Chatzar number 1, Upirish Echad Mehem, and 1 person left the group, LaChatzar Acheres, and he went to Chatzar number 2. V'nafal alav Shama Mapolis, and over there in Chatzar number 2, a building fell on that one individual who separated from the group. Mefakhin, you still go ahead and be Mechal Shabbos to uncover him. Why? Since the group of 9 are still intact in Chatzar number 1, we still apply the rule of Kol Kavua Kemechza Al Mechza Dami. Says the Mechaber weiter, Aval im nekru kulam, but let's say the entire group disbanded. What does that mean, that the entire group disbanded? So there was this group of 10 people, 9 Einam Yehudim and 1 Yisrael in Chatzar number 1, and now they decided it's time to leave. So they all walked out of Chatzar number 1, and Tony went one way, and Sylvester went another way, and Felix went another way, and Vinny went another way, and Ruvain went another way. So they all disbanded. They left Chatzar number 1, and the group has disbanded. Each one is going in his own direction. Ubishas akirasan pirish echad mihen lechatzar acheres v'nafal alav, and we know that one person went into Chatzar number 2, and a building fell down on him. Ein mefakhin alav. Now we cannot be Mechal Shabbos in Chatzar number 2. Why? Shekeven shenekar kviyas harishon memekaymai are reading called the parish Meruba Parish. In the Mechaber's first scenario, there was a group of 10 in Chatzar number 1. 1 person left. The other 9 remained in Chatzar number 1. The original kvius, the original group, is still considered to be intact in Chatzar number 1, so we don't have to say called the parish Meruba Parish, V'chai Behem, we could be Makel, we would say Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. If a building falls down in Chatzar number 2, we're going to be Mechal Shabbos to clear away the wreckage, to try to save the person, because it could be that that's the Israel. But if everybody left Chatzar number 1, and not only everybody left Chatzar number 1, we're going to see this in the Mishnah Berurah. Not only did they leave Chatzar number 1, but everybody went in different directions. Everybody's going home. One guy's going home, one guy's going to work, one guy's going on a trip. They're all disbanding. And one person went into Chatzar number 2 and a building fell down. We can't, and we don't know who. We don't know if it was the Yisrael or was an Eini Yehudi. We can't be Mechal Shabbos. Why? Because now we have no choice. We have to say, called the parish Meruba Parish. We have to assume that the one who went into Chatzar number 2 came from the majority of the group, which was Einam Yehudim. We can no longer say, Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. Why? Because there's no Kvius anymore. The entire Kvius disbanded. So we can't be Makel and stretch the rules and say, Kol Kavua Kemechza Mechza Dami. There's no longer any Kvius. There's no longer any grouping. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Gimel. So the truth is, we did Gimel already. Let's go to Dalet. Upirish Echad. So you had this group of 10, 9 Enim Yehudim, and 1 Yehudi in the Chatzah number 1, Upirish Echad, and one of them left. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber makes it sound like this halacha only applies if one person left Chatzah number 1, but there's still 9 left in Chatzah number 1, then we could say that the Kviyus still remains. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, we could stretch it even more than that. Lav dafke echad, ela afilu pisha ruba. Let's say you had 10 in Chatzah number 1, and let's say 7 of them left. But there's still 3 in Chatzah number 1. If there's still 3 people in Chatzah number 1, we could still stretch and say kol kavua kemech tzamech tzadami, because there's still an element of the original group, of the original kviyus, left b'mekaymai in its place. Since the original grouping still remains in its place, we don't usually say this kula. Usually we say called the parish meruba parish. I don't care if the original kviyus is still in its place. When you have a piece of meat that's found in the street, and there are 7 kosher stores and 3 treifa stores, we apply the rule of kol the parish meruba parish. Even though all 10 butcher stores are still open for business, and the original kviyus is still b'mekayma emedes, we don't look at the piece of meat that you found on the floor, and we don't say, oh, we have to look at it as a kviyus, called kviyus kemech tzamech tzadami. Why? Because the kviyus is still in its place. There's still all 10 butcher shops are still there. No, we don't say that. We say kol the parish, since the shaila starts when the meat is out of the grouping, kol the parish meruba parish. Not so over here. Gabi pikuach nefesh, akila rachmana. When it comes to pikuach nefesh, the Torah is mekel, tiksiv achai behem v'loisha yamas behem. Mashma shelo yuchal lavai b'shem inyin lidei misas Yisrael. Ois kan vav kemechza, we say kemechza, usafik defashas lahakel. V'ayin me'evan ezer siman dalid sif lamadalid. A peripheral halacha, the Mishnah Berurah brings down, he says, if you take a look in Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer, you'll see the following halacha. If you find a child in a city that is mostly Einam Yehudim, Ein Mechalin Alav Es HaShabbos, you would not be Mechal Shabbos. So you're in a city where the roiv of the children are Einam Yehudim, and you find a child, you chance upon a child in the street, in such a city. You can't be Mechal Shabbos for that child. When we find this child in the street, what rule should we apply? On the one hand, called the parish meruba parish, right? This child, you're finding this child in the street, you're not finding this child in a grouping, you're not finding him in a kviyus, that you should say, kol kavua kemech tzamech tzadami. He's a parish. He's one child separated from the group. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch says that he's bringing down over here. He says this is considered a case of kol the parish meruba parish. But the Ramah b'haga polisham. The Ramah disagrees with this. The Ramah says no. One child in a city that's roiv einam Yehudim, you would be Mechal Shabbos. If a building fell chas v'chalil on a child in such a city, you would clear away the rubble to save that child. Why? The b'nei ir chashivi kikvia v'damya ledina dahacha. Because the Ramah looks at it, the Ramah says, you have a city. All of the children of that city they make up one grouping. They're the group of children of the city. And therefore, by every child, we don't say kol the parish meruba parish. We say kol kavua kemech tzamech tzadami. V'das agrosham litzay karama ayin chav v'nimtza b'derech v'roiva oivrim av digalulim l'kulei alma ozlina basaruba. But if you find them walking on a street, now you and all the other kids, there's a whole bunch of people walking on the street, and most of the people who walk on the street are Edom Yehudim, then you can't look at him as being part of a grouping. You have to apply kol the parish meruba parish. Eis katan zayin im nekru kulam. The Mechaber said, but if all 10 people from Chatzar number 1 disbanded, so that there's none of the original kvius is still in place, then you cannot say kol kavua k'mech tzadami. Then you have to say kol the parish. Now the Mechaber does not really describe the scenario in detail. He just says everybody left. They all disbanded. Everybody left Chotzer number 1. The Mishnah Berurah dives a little bit deeper into the exact scenario. Says the Mishnah Berurah Pirush, Shenekru lehispazer kol echad ledarkoi ubatla kviyusam. This means, the way I described it when I learned the Shulchan Aruch, it means that all 10 people left and everybody's going on his own merry way. So that the group, not only are they leaving Chotzer number 1, but the group is disbanding. It's like I said, Vinny is going to the left, Tony is going to the right, Vito is going straight, Sylvester is turning around and going in the opposite direction. They're all being nispazer. The whole grouping is disbanding. But if you have a case where all 10 people left Chotzer number 1, and they're all walking together, and one of them went into Chotzer number 2, and the other 9 are still walking together, even if they're down the block, then we're still going to say Kol Kavua K'mech Tzadami, because the 9 are still together, even if they're not still in Chotzer number 1, but they're still together. So then we will still look at the fellow in Chotzer number 2, and we will still say Kol Kavua K'mech Tzadami, and we'll be Mechal Shabbos to clear away Amapolis in Chotzer number 2. Kevan da'adayin he b'chabura achas nikra kavua v'dinoi k'dmei ikara. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Siv Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This is limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs, panos, and sheduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Bias Koil Tzedek B'meher V'Yameinu Amen. Be well.